Thank you very much, Chairman of this evening proceedings, Mr. Huggins of St. Joseph, my former parliamentary colleague and the next Member of Parliament for St. Joseph, Mr. Terence Dayal Singh, Councillor Britt Camino, and the next Member of Parliament for St. Anne's East, Dr. Nian Gadsby Dolly. Party officers present here this evening, including the Party Labor Relations Officer, Mrs. Jennifer Baptiste Primus. I don't see Mr. Primus, but I know in front of every strong woman, there's Mr. Primus, or a Mr. Primus. Other councillors, other party officers, the chairman of the Tunapuna Piarco Regional Corporation, who is always with us, and I'm very happy to see you out again tonight. I see you survived Saturday. Members of the community of Mount Hope, visitors to the community of Mount Hope, citizens listening to us on the various radio stations. A very good evening to you here in Trinidad and Tobago in the middle of an election campaign. I want to say something to my fellow countrymen in Trinidad and Tobago. Whatever issues we may have in this country and with our governance, I don't want us to lose sight of the fact that we are a lot better off than a lot of people in many parts of the world. So let's start from there. And many of you parents would have seen your ability to look after your children improve over the years. And if you look backwards towards your parents, you would have seen how well you would have done. And you would have seen a few years ago the prospects that you held out for your children or your neighbor's children and the country's children. And the quality of life that we've been accustomed to has been reasonable and in many instances quite good. And out of that came an understanding that we can be a whole lot better. There was a time when I was a little boy, I remember there used to be some Land Rovers driving around the village from the health department, and on the doors, I didn't know what it meant, but I could read. So on the doors, it used to be marked the Yaws Eradication Program. Citizens of this country were inflicted by yaws. And one of the problems to be faced by the government of that day was to eradicate that scourge. Hookworm used to be a problem in the country too. And that had to be eradicated because it was a problem to be focused on at that time. Today, those are not our expectations. Our expectations are to have access to cutting-edge technology in the best medical institution, talking about MRI and things like that. Because we've long gone past the understanding that basic health service, and by basic I mean bandage and injection, is what health was all about. We've gone past that, and we are now aspiring to have access to whatever the technology in the world is. We want it here in Trinidad and Tobago. And nothing wrong with that. We put that in our national anthem, that we have taken charge of this country from the English, and we have boundless faith in our destiny that we can manage this affair and give the next generation a better life than we have had and our grandparents had. That's what the mission was. So whenever there's a government in office, the number one assignment of that government is to protect the gains we've made. Keep us safe and keep our economy sound so we can pay the bills. And if a government is failing in these two areas, then the government is failing punto final. It's as simple as that. And it matters not who you are in Trinidad and Tobago today. You can meet no honest person who can tell you that having acknowledged in 2010 that crime and insecurity was our number one problem and probably the main issue in the election of 2010, that after 5 years, the government of Trinidad and Tobago has adequately addressed the problem. We're seeing bigger guns in the country today, and more of them. There are more handguns available on the street, different varieties. And our borders have been wide open and acknowledged so to be for 5 years. And all of a sudden an election is due because no matter how pretty you are, how well made up you are, how well presented you are, your term of office as Prime Minister is 5 years and no more. And the 5 years ended. And after we did not adequately address the number one issue of crime and insecurity, we have an election campaign, and the Prime Minister is offering you zero tolerance on crime. Take note of that. In 2010, she didn't offer you that. In 2011, she didn't offer you that. It might have been that in 2010, they were 90% about committing crime or turning a blind eye to crime. And in 2011, 70%. In 2012, 40%. 2013, 20%. 2014, 10%. And by the time we reach the election, we're now down to zero. Because Section 34 was a crime. It was a heinous crime constructed in dark places, soft voices, and executed inside the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. So I'm not surprised now that they got what they want out of the term of office that they're offering you now. Zero tolerance on crime. Why didn't you offer us that in 2010 when you came in? I stood in the Parliament and I told the Prime Minister, this country has elected a new Prime Minister. We also have a new opposition leader. We have the opportunity to do things differently for the benefit of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And if you do what is for the benefit of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, you can count on the support of the opposition. We did that. Our record will show that we supported more government bills than any other opposition. That we voted for the first budget of the government saying to them, while we didn't agree with every provision, there was enough in the budget for us to agree with, and we voted for it. And as opposition leader and as PNM leader, some of my own PNM members took issue with me. Why are you voting for a government budget? And I said it wasn't a government budget. It was the allocation for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And anything for the people of Trinidad and Tobago, we stand with the government on that. And we went right up to getting from the government an assurance that as we move to reduce the backlog of cases in the courthouse and to improve the handling of prisoners in the prisons and to improve the dispensing of justice in the country, we voted for an administration of justice bill, put to us well packaged and tied with bows and bangles, telling us that it was for the treatment of the excesses in the court system and to remove impediments in the dispensation of justice. And they slipped inside there, Section 34. And they proclaimed Section 34 in the dead of night, Independence Night. And even before it was gazetted for persons to know what they have done, persons who would have benefited from that outrage went to court the next morning and claimed the right to be set free. And even since, as they abandoned the exercise to treat with the matters in the court and the prison, those who went to court that early morning before the Gazette was printed, they are now free. Can't go to America to answer questions, and not in the court in Trinidad and Tobago. Mrs. Kamla Prasad Bisesa, Volney, and the cabal gave them a get-out-of-jail-free card. And now, she has the temerity to come to us and is campaigning on a cliche that they heard from somewhere else. Zero tolerance on crime. As if we've forgotten that. As if we've forgotten that. They have not brought one single initiative that is new to address a single problem in the country. So the 5 years up, and they are advancing themselves for another 5 years, as if we are suckers for punishment. And you know what they're defending and asking you for another 5 years on? A series of programs conceptualized and operated by the previous government. The Prime Minister is now at a rally, rallying her troops for the election, and her major promise is holding out to the country that the HDC will continue to build houses. The HDC will continue to build houses. Like she never heard about me and Noel Garcia and the Patrick Manning administration and record-breaking houses in the ministry. You don't need Kamala Prasad Bissessa and her cronies and the cabal for the HDC to build houses. You need the PNM to build houses and distribute them without the largesse and the corruption that has associated itself with her administration. That's what you need. It was under the PNM that after years of service from the NHA, we went upwards and created the HDC out of the NHA. Today we have to hear as the major campaign offering that the HDC will continue to build houses. And of course, even as you can't get the basic medication in CDAP, a program conceived under the PNM to bring relief to those persons with chronic illnesses, where in the PNM, ministers were not stealing public money, but were spending public money on medication that you could access in every pharmacy across the country. Today, you can't get the basic medication. She's holding out CDAP as a promise. Re-elect her, and you will get CDAP. And then, of course, they had the worst thing to say about CPEP. CPEP was meant to be a nursery for small business, where the government will introduce these groups under leadership, and you'll work for the government for a while, build up some skills, build up some work in the community, and then you grow into sustainable business. They call CPEP workers hogs with their noses in the trough. Hogs with their nose in the trough. That is how Ganga Singh describes CPEP workers. But now every political event they have, they must corral CPEP workers and threaten them if they don't come to the UNC function, they wouldn't get this and they wouldn't get that. And now they're telling them that they will know how they vote. So if you don't vote for them and they're going to win, and when they come in, you will lose the CPEP work. Tonight, I want to say to all CPEP workers, they have absolutely no way of knowing how you're going to vote except that they know that you're going to vote them out of office. So when you go to the polling station, put the X by the balize and ram your finger in the ink down to your elbow and give them the shaft. They have no way of knowing how you're going to vote. The vote in Trinidad and Tobago, thank God, remains secret. We are protected by the Constitution. They haven't mashed up that yet. And then, of course, URP was under the Ministry of Works. To be able to carry out their nefarious activities, the Prime Minister broke it into 3 parts. Put a part under Rambachan in the Ministry of Works, put a part under Ramadar Singh in the Ministry of the People, as they call it, and she took a part unto herself. And between the 3 of them, they waged war against the Treasury. They converted a program that was meant to bring relief to unemployed and unfortunate persons in communities to do development in communities using those persons who were unemployed, to give them an opportunity to get an income, to put food on the table, to tide them over until better comes in the economy. You know what they've done? They converted it to a contractor factory. The money is now being spent in contractors, known to them, and the minister is in charge of the contracting. And one minister would sit in a ministry and give out $200 million in contracts, but none of those contracts above $500,000. And you know why? Because that limits the operation to the minister and the PS. If they go beyond $500,000, they go beyond the PS limit and they have to use a different procurement procedure. But if they stay under $500,000, the weak-kneed, lily-livered PS will do what the minister says, and the minister is running the show. So if they want to give you $2 million, they give you 4 contracts. So you get phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4 on Kun Trace. And that is 4 contracts, $2 million. And he has a friend somewhere who wants a house, and the minister authorizes the building of a house for somebody. That is how URP funds have been used. And even when the budget was busted and there's no money in the budget, they proceed to award contracts. And only last week, the nefarious cabinet who encouraged that, and I might tell you, no cabinet could encourage that without the say-so of the Prime Minister, and no Minister of Finance could do what I'm going to tell you here without the Prime Minister. They knew there was no money in the budget, but they keep awarding contracts left, right, and center because they are about contracts, and contracts start with C, and corruption starts with the same C. And last week, after they did that for the elections, the cabinet approved, with no parliament in place, just exactly what we're telling you they were going to do, with no parliament in place, in violation of the spirit, if not the letter of the regulation and the laws in this country. This cabinet, on its way out of office 4 times, approved $250 million for the Minister of Finance to backstop the PSs who've been spending money like that. But nobody could ask the question. In any decent Westminster system, no cabinet would do that. If a cabinet does that in Canada or in England or New Zealand or even in India, the government will have to be held accountable for that. But in Trinidad and Tobago, Mrs. Prasad Bisesa holds herself as not having to account to the people of Trinidad and Tobago except to tell you a set of nonsense. Why she destroys the country's systems, destroys our institutions, destroys our potential to be a decent people. And that is how she intends to run the country. And she wants 5 more years of that. She wants 5 more years of that. Until she has a plan. She has a plan to do that. That was the plan. When they dissolved, in fact, when the parliament expired, because this woman went to the parliament down to the very last Friday. Even if she wanted another Friday, it wasn't available. She took every single Friday the law allowed. And then the parliament dissolved on the 17th of June. She then puts the election for the 7th of September, giving herself and her mismanagement and her questionable colleagues the opportunity to do what I just told you there. The average number of days in this country's history between the parliament dissolving and election day is 40 days. There was only one time that we went well beyond 40 days, and that was the year when we changed the constitution from the independence constitution to the Republican constitution. There was good reason for that delay. Never again was that happen. But she knew what she was about, to govern the country without accountability, without monitors in place, because the parliament is supposed to monitor her. I want to ask her tonight, tomorrow morning, tell this country that what I've just said here is not true. Tell the country, Mrs. Bisesa, that you didn't sit in the cabinet last week and approved $250 million to cover money you all spent that wasn't in the vote. And I want the media who is present here tonight, who will see her parading around the country, put your microphone in her face and ask her if she didn't do that. And if she answers yes, well, you know where to put her on the 7th of September. And if she answers no, then you know she's not speaking the truth again. And if she says, I wasn't advised, then you know you don't need her anymore. Because this is what we have been putting up with. This is what has passed for administration in Trinidad and Tobago. And while this is going on with your money, your resources, your regulations, she's telling you the partnership is stronger than ever. The partnership is stronger than ever. Parliament dissolved since June 17th. Up to nomination morning, they're not sure who the candidates are. Many of them got announced on Monday, and by Friday, they're gone. Even on the way to registration on nomination day, they're looking over their shoulder because they're not sure that they can be changed along the way. I give you the assurance, she says, I will keep the partnership together. Some assurance. Some partnership, like the partnership was breeding. The partnership gave rise to about 8 parties. The partnership gave rise to the ILP. First child, remember that one? When they came into office, there was no ILP. My friend Jack Warner was HNIC. I want to ask him, I said, what that means? He said, I'm head nigger in charge. That was the first party that the partnership created. Today, the ILP is a political party spawned and bred out of the partnership that she's going to hold together. Down in my constituency, there's something called the Alliance of Independence, another party. 1 week they're alive, next week they're dead. Next week they come back alive, next week they're dead. And when they were off on vacation between those 2 weeks, the partnership gave rise to the third. Remember the third? Right. Well, I'm hearing it's the third force, but I'm not going there. It's just a simple third. And then, of course, they had the support of Labour when they came in. But in 2012, David Abdullah understood what was going on and wanted no part of the tainting that is taking place. The MSJ pulled out and left Harold MacLeod in there. That's child number 4. Then we had Philip Alexander, independent, out of it. And then we go to Tobago. And we saw the Forward, led by Christine Moore, a former UNC minister of 9 days charge. She leading the Forwards in Tobago. And then, of course, there's Watson Duke, who everybody knows who you're working for. And that brings me to the COP that died. Well, we dealt with the TOP in Tobago, and apparently they're still part of this arrangement. I don't know who is there, but the COP, who is a party that had a habit of telling us that they are the conscience of the country. Conscience of the country. The TOP had an opportunity under Section 34 to stand up in this country and say, we are the COP, and you, the UNC, what you have done there is not within the principles that we subscribe to, and show that they had some instruments to play a game of football. They didn't have that. You know what they did? You know what Prakash Ramadhan did during Section 34? He provided 100% support for the UNC in that outrage. And only after a week of digging into the issue, we discovered that he had personal liabilities in the matter. he had to admit that he was the chairman of the Legislative Review Committee, which oversaw or ought to have overseen the legislation that came to the parliament. And he couldn't tell us where Clause 34 came from. Because our advice from good quarters is that Section 34 didn't come from within the government system. And Prakash Ramadan knew that. And he supported the UNC in Section 34. But worse was to come. When they started the consultation for the Constitution, the Prime Minister gave Prakash Ramadan the responsibility for those consultations. He spent $20 million of your money and produced a report. In that report, there was absolutely no mention of any consultation on any runoff. And when the government came to the parliament to legislate this drastic change in our election system, the Prime Minister spoke another untruth to the country and said that this runoff came as a result of consultation in the reform under Prakash Ramadan. And guess what? Prakash Ramadan told the country yes. And then they produced an appendix with the runoff. Prakash Ramadan was in charge of that, to say the runoff was there. But when they produced the report, they never produced the appendix. The appendix only came after, when people surrounded the parliament and said this was never any part of the discussion. But Prakash Ramadan, in support of the UNC, in support of Kamla Prasad-Bissessar, was telling the country, as chairman of the exercise, that was part of the discussion, and here it is in an appendix. It took Merle Hodge, a member of the commission, to come out outside the parliament and spend night and day and tell this country that Prakash Ramadan was lying to the country. And when it came to the vote in the parliament, even after that, when it came to the vote in the parliament, when Winston Dukaran, the leader of the party, which he, Prakash Ramadan, was leading, the founder of the party, Winston Dukaran, when he voted against the runoff, and Carolyn C. Prasad-Bechan, another COP member, voted against it. Another one abstained. And the reason for their actions were that the runoff was aimed at eliminating their party. Prakash Ramadan voted for the runoff, even though the founder of his party was saying to him in his presence that this is a dagger aimed at our hearts. That is the man who they're putting up in St. Augustine. Negotiated a seat for himself because he thinks it's a safe seat. In 2015, there is no safe seat. You have to earn it one vote at a time. And a man of that record has no business in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. And tonight, I want to say to all those of you who voted for the COP in 2010, that is what you got, regardless of what you voted for. And in 2015, you have the opportunity to rectify that. Vote for the People's National Movement. You hear them talking about Children's Hospital. And you heard the Prime Minister saying and praising herself. Go to China, take a loan, bring down a Chinese brigade, and you build a hospital, fine. So we have another hospital. And she's praising herself that this country never had a children's hospital. And she is giving the country a children's hospital for the first time. You think it's because Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar doesn't know that there is one in Mount Hope called Wendy Fitzwilliams Children's Hospital? You think because she doesn't know? It is because she thinks that you're stupid and you would not pay attention to the truth. And if you hear the lie often enough, you will begin to believe that it is true. Even after we pointed out to her, Madam, we have one in Mount Hope, 6 miles away. She kept on telling you she built the first children's hospital. We built so many roads in this country. When I first came from Tobago, the big thing in Trinidad was the flyover in Barataria. I used to stay up in Mova and look down in amazement at cars going over and cars going under. Little boy from Tobago. And that highway was built in increments up to Curep, up the road as we go. And then we're going down south, and you're going down towards Cuba and Cali Bay, 2 lanes of traffic. And every Monday morning was head-on collision on Mac being stretched. And the PNM built the highway from Curep all the way down to San Fernando and all to Golconda. Mrs. Kamla Prasad Bisesa is telling you, the little piece that she built, call she Ma Kamla. So put up a big plaque, big banner. Thank you for the highway, Ma Kamla. I never heard anybody tell Eric Williams, thank you, Pa Williams, for the highway he built. I never heard anybody tell George Chambers, thank you, Pa Georgie, for the one you built. I was a young man working to build this country. As general manager of National Quarries, my assignment was to ensure that high-quality, world-class materials were available in scientific grades, and we were building at the same time the National Stadium, Point Lisas, Mount Hope, all being built at the same time. The port at Point Lisas, all these things were being built at the same time. You ever hear me say, well, I build this, or John built that? Trinidad and Tobago was on the march. And this nonsense about self-promotion when they spend public money has to stop. It is not your money. And stop praising yourself for it. It's the job you are given to do, and it's people's money. It is because you figure it's your money why you all took so much of it. I would have been embarrassed if I had gone to a site and see that banner. Thank you, Mark Kamla, for the highway. And that's the kind of stupidness that pervades the society of Trinidad and Tobago. Led from the top. It was bad enough if that was happening somewhere where people didn't know better. It's an insult to the intelligence of all the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and it lays the foundation for people to believe that you owe them something. You don't owe any office holder in this country anything. They owe you something. They're working for you, and when you hire them, they must work for you. And if they thief your money or they underperform, you must hold them accountable. A few weeks ago, I was invited to address the Southern Energy Chamber. And I took the opportunity then to speak on the matter of the energy sector and the crisis that the energy sector is in and what is facing Trinidad and Tobago. The Minister of Energy spent 2 weeks advertising himself in response to the issues I raised. And of all the matters I pointed to of concern in that meeting, the only issue he could have taken was that I said that the incoming government will ensure that the ministry is staffed by adequate numbers of highly qualified technical people who are well paid. Minister Ramnarayan, the only thing he could take issue with was that, and said, I attacked the staff in the Ministry of Energy. So if I say that you are supposed to be highly qualified and well paid, in the eyes of Ramnarayan, that's an attack. But he could not have taken issue with a single point and didn't raise a single response to the important matters I raised, and these are matters that go to the center of the quality of life of the people of Trinidad and Tobago and our potential economic prosperity or disaster. I raised the fact that we have been having a shortage of natural gas for 2.5 years that is still going on and is not likely to go away in the very near future. I raised the fact that the contracts for the major plants in Point Lisas, the gas contracts, are coming to an end, And the government of Trinidad and Tobago is required to negotiate new contracts in such a way that there's no stoppage, or worse, there's no pulling out of any of those plants from Trinidad and Tobago. I raise the fact that the price of oil has dropped from a high of almost $140 to is now $40. And every dollar fall in oil price is $100 million less that we get. And I raise all these issues. The Minister of Energy never responded to any of them. And we've heard the Prime Minister shouting up and down and calling my name every night, every day, every night. But the one thing the Prime Minister has not done, as we are 3 weeks away from a general election, the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago has suelessly avoided the state of affairs in Trinidad and Tobago with respect to the payment of the country's bills. Oil price is now at $40. We are getting a bit less than that. And the gas price is down at $2.25 per unit. How could that be happening and the country's managers are oblivious, hoping to get back into office, and when they get in, then they will deal with that. But in the meantime, they're behaving as though the problem is not there. All they were able to do was to destroy confidence in the country. I want to ask the Prime Minister tonight if there is any truth in the statements being made to me that government checks going to the banks are going with instructions that they shouldn't be dealt with for 2 weeks. And if in government agencies around the country there's any instance where post-dated checks are being issued. What is happening right now is that the government is hiding from you the very serious state of affairs with respect to the payment of bills in Trinidad and Tobago. And to make matters worse, they interfere with the foreign exchange system and destroy the confidence that we had in the central bank to supply foreign exchange at a rate at which we could use it without hoarding problems and without leakage problems. From the day they put Jawala Rambaran in that bank, the problem started, and the confidence has been lost and will never return until the PNM returns to office as the government of Trinidad and Tobago. And while that foreign exchange issue is there causing some serious headaches, you hear the major banks saying, however they said it, it came across to the people of Trinidad and Tobago that they had suspended trading in foreign exchange. And the next morning, after they've been leaned on, they said, no, we didn't suspend it, you know. What we do, we're tightening it. So if it's squeezing you already and they're tightening it, what is your future? And what is the governor and the government doing to fix the situation? Waiting to get back into office after election and then tell you too bad for you. Too bad for you. As I speak to you now, there are a number of parents who have students abroad, children studying abroad, who they have to fund, and they cannot access the foreign exchange to pay those bills. There are a number of business houses who cannot access foreign exchange to pay their suppliers, and suppliers are increasing their charges, which you will have to pay, because when the importers have to pay more because they are now unreliable payers, who pays the difference? You, the people. And those are not issues that are being addressed by the managers who created this mismanagement of our affairs. And as they are on their way out to office, I say to them, when you came into office, these problems were not there. These are problems which you have created as a result of your mishandling of public affairs in Trinidad and Tobago. So rather than the government solving problems for the people, the government became a problem for the people. And if you lived in this country, I don't have to tell you that. You've seen it for yourself. Look at what is going on here now. Right up to the edge of nomination day, horse trading taking place, whoring out the seats here and there. You never know who is who. That is exactly how they ran the country. If you want a good insight through a window to see how the cabinet operated, look at what happened around the appointments of candidates. It's the same thing, the same behavior. This one hold on to that, this one blocking that, this one negotiating that, this one getting that, surprise here, shock there. And if that is what is outside before election day, God forbid you put them back into office, that is what you're going to get as the government of Trinidad and Tobago. Some of the people that they've selected are well known to us, and you'll hear more about it as we go forward. But the one thing they have in common is an ability and a record to be dishonest. They're well known to us, and we'll advise you accordingly as we go forward. Oh, you were in UE too? You know them? Right. If that is how you are preparing to get into office, that is the clearest indication of what is going to happen if they get back in there. And given what we have experienced in the past 5 years, we had 4 cabinet reshuffles. We've had 5 ministers of national security in a situation where crime was the #1 problem. A simple matter, as an opposition leader saying to the government, we stand ready to support you any Friday evening. Draft it and bring it to the parliament. Let us abolish the current arrangement in place for appointing a commissioner of police. It is not working. It will not work. It is part of the problem. We could abolish it and improve it in one Friday evening. For reasons best known to the government flatly refused to do it. Only last week, you had the commissioner of police saying, not just tongue-in-cheek, but openly, that he was the most, what did he say? He had the most acting. Basically what he was saying is that he was being treated in a manner unbefitting of the office of Commissioner of Police. Whether you like him or you don't like him, that is not the issue. The issue is he is our Commissioner of Police, and we want him fully in the saddle in charge of his 7,000 men under arms, to be respected and supported for whatever time he's there. And for him to come out and talk like that, he's human. He is human. He must understand and he must feel. Why is the government doing that? Refusing to rectify it, refusing to even begin the process to pretend that you want to appoint a commissioner of police, and telling me you have zero tolerance on crime. And asking us to accept that and give them 5 more years. I went to Maloney last week. Or was it this week? Last week I was in Maloney. I took with me a document from the University of the West Indies. It was a research exercise where people who are highly qualified and highly trained examined the laptop operations in this country to see what effect it was having on the education system and if it was in fact meeting the expectations. That's what science is about. That's what research is for. I took the document and I read from it. The document said that the laptops introduced as they are introduced are having no significant effect on the education system. And in fact, there are some negatives associated with it that we should be cognizant of. Those were not my words. I didn't do the research. I read the research. It confirmed our suspicions, but now we have hard empirical data that the thing is not doing what they're saying it's going to do. So we're spending a lot of money. Children are getting laptops, but the laptops are not contributing significantly, and the laptops are not integrated into the education system as a teaching tool. So the minister responds, and here the minister's response. Oh, that was only one research. In other words, let us research and research and research until a report comes up that says it's not true. That's the minister. And then he leaves Trinidad, where he is overseeing this debacle and can say no more about the Trinidad operations. And he goes around the world and says there are other reports elsewhere in the world that says otherwise. What do we care what other people's reports say? Our report says that our operation is failing. We need now to address that. So the minister answered in that way. So the prime minister yesterday they had a show somewhere in Atto Bolden. And she was there shouting my name again. And talking about their greatest invention. The one thing they have invented since they came into office is a no Rowley campaign. That's the only thing they invented. And she's saying that I don't want children to get laptops. And I only want those who are well-to-do to get laptops. And those who can't afford it, I don't want them to get laptops. You ever hear more stupid this? The study did not talk about who had money and who didn't have money. It talked about the laptops in the school system. And it examined boys and the girls. And you saw how it was affecting both the boys and the girls. It had nothing to do with your social or financial or economic status. So that's the first thing the Prime Minister did. Try to distract you by this division of who have and who don't have. And she, of course, is Mama Kamla, giving all those who they have. And then she went on to say that in response to the study, not that she will ensure that the research is done or a review is done or they rectify the shortcomings, She said in response to that, all she will do is buy more laptops and give more laptops now to first-year students and primary school children. So in other words, she's telling us that this program is all about buying and distributing laptops. It has nothing to do with education. Because if the examination of the laptops in education don't attract your attention or you don't care about that, and all you're concerned about is buying more laptops and distributing more laptops, is that what the taxpayers want? You're right. Whoever is supplying the laptops will get more money and we get less education. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. I would have thought that the Prime Minister and the Minister would have responded by saying, we are embarking on our own exercise to look at it and to rectify it and to make sure that the money spent have a reasonable outcome. They're not concerned about that. They want 5 more years to buy 5 more years of laptops. But why are we surprised? Why are we surprised? When Mrs. Kamla Prasad Bisesa was Education Minister under Basdeo Pandey, she went down Tacville Street, bought BH Rose warehouse without cabinet approval, and take all Laventry children and Belmont children and put them in there. It was called a Kamla Sec. Remember that school? She walks around now telling us that she built 90 schools in Trinidad, we can't find them. I want to ask her what became of the Kamla Sec that she bought and created out of BH Rose warehouse. After 2 months, they had to abandon it because it was found not to be fit for students. That is the record of Kamla Prasad Bisesa. And if you could do that with a school, why you can't do it with laptop too? It's as simple as that. But they think we forget them and don't know them, But you, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, if you are going to choose wisely on September 7th, you need to remember and know all these things. And you need to know if you want any more of it. They're telling you they will defend UTT. Defend UTT from whom? From the PNM? It was the PNM that expanded UWI. Expanded it. Notwithstanding what's going on there now. It is the PNM who supported USC in Maracas, St. Joseph, where they're operating one of the finest small universities in the region with government support, and they will get more support under PNM administration. You go there and you'll see some of the finest young people in Trinidad and Tobago going about their business, preparing themselves to be among the finest of our citizens. And they have the fullest support of the PNM. That's our third university in our country. It was the PNM that said that we will create in Trinidad and Tobago a University of Trinidad and Tobago, because UWI is a regional university. We pay for it, but it is belonging to the entire region. And the same way some of our students go to Jamaica, and the Jamaicans pay to have them there, and the Barbadians pay to have them there. We pay to have people come here to UWI, and we pick up the bills here. It's a regional body. And so therefore, when we create the University of Trinidad and Tobago, it was specific for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. When we put the idea out, like everything else, they opposed it. Satmar said it was a school to put underqualified and unprepared black people, because everything they see is race. We said no, it is to develop in our country the technical skills which the economy would need. They didn't believe us and they didn't support it. We had in that university a fashion program. Fashion is one of the areas where we can grow. We are creative people. And if we get into the world fashion industry, we only want one or two successes, and we get into the big markets and we're there. Remember Anya Ayongchi? You saw how Anya made a name for herself on the big stage, representing Trinidad and Tobago. How many of you know Andrew Ramroop from Tacarigua? One of the finest tailors in the world. He's the only tailor who's called Professor. And he was there at UTT, helping us to create this fashion. We said diversify the economy. Into what? It sounds good, but diversify into what? Fashion industry was an area. And the young people at UTT were going guns, government change. They did all manner and said all manner of things about Andrew Ramroop and virtually shut the program down. I tell you tonight, one of the first things we will do when we get into office is to apologize again to Andrew Ramroop and ask him to come back and continue helping us. I was in Barbados a few weeks ago, taking in the first of the CPL matches. And every so often I'm in Barbados and I take a weekend there, my in-laws and other friends and so on. And I really cherish the opportunity to play around the golf with Desmond Haynes and some of his friends. And I remember Gordon Greenidge was in Trinidad and Tobago at UTT. Gordon Greenidge. Probably the best opener the West Indies ever produced. Easily the most technical of our openers. And talking about a man who demonstrates what it has to take to succeed at the level at which he succeeded. Bringing that to the people of Trinidad and Tobago in a sports program. You know what Gordon Greenidge told me? With an air of sadness. He said, when I was thrown out, and that's his words, when I was thrown out of UTT, I had just concluded negotiations with the universities, some universities abroad, and we were just about to initiate an inter-university tournament, and the ICC was prepared to support it. So university competition was coming, and coming out of where? Out of UTT in Trinidad. But this government, these Philistines who came to our doors, they chased Gordon Greenidge summarily out of UTT, and with that dream. I can tell you now As we spoke of things of this matter, 7 West Indian stars said, if you become the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, we'll be hurrying down to help you with your young people. And one of them, I wouldn't tell you which one, said, the 7th of September is my birthday, and I want a present for my birthday. I want a PNM government in Trinidad and Tobago. We have the ability, we have the potential to use all kinds of resources to take us to the places we want to go. What we have is bad blood and bad behavior concentrated in bad governance under Kamla Prasad Bisesa and her misguided crop. The PNM will change all of that. You ask me, what can we look forward to on the morning of September 8th? You look forward to a gentle breeze blowing across Trinidad and Tobago, taking the temperature down. You look forward to putting behind you these tales of woe. And you look ahead and focus on our potential, which, if realized, even in a situation of difficult economic circumstances, we will still be able to make the progress that we aspired to make in 1962. We simply have to make the best use of what's available to us. A period of difficulties in front of us. How can our managers not be telling us about that? How are we going to pay the bills at $40? What you need first and foremost is honest government, so the $40 remain your $40 and not 30 for them and 10 for you. We need to ensure that we know that the first call on our foreign exchange is to pay debt, because we borrowed money and spent it. And when the time comes to pay whatever foreign exchange we have, the first call on it is to pay that foreign debt. And after we do that, we then have to decide how much of it goes to education, how much of it goes to health. It calls for sober, sane, and experienced management. And instead of responding to these issues when she's in charge of it and is responsible for any debacle that came out of her stewardship, the Prime Minister is talking a set of unbelievable garbage that Rowley going to cut this and Rowley going to cut that and Rowley going to cut this, as though it is about Rowley. It is not about me. It's about you and the challenges which you're going to face in the days ahead. You put God out your thoughts and put them back into government, and then you will know where barley grew. Then you will know where barley grew. Put them back into government. They have an insatiable appetite for money. They have an insatiable greed. They are totally disrespectful of your intelligence, and they believe they could tell you any dotishness and you will fall for it. So on the way out of office, after 5 years of fooling around and damaging your prospect, Kamla has a plan. Well, I have a plan too. Keith Rowley and the PNM have a plan. And the first aspect of that plan is to join with you, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, to vote them out of office. I have a plan. On Thursday morning at the Radisson Crown Reef, we will be putting our documents before you. The PNM manifesto is ready. It's being printed right now as I speak to you. You will see copies of it. You'll read copies of it. And by midday on Thursday, it will be on the internet. So you will see what our convention binds the PNM to as we come to you asking for your franchise. We don't come to you asking you to vote for us because we hate the UNC. No, we don't hate anybody. The hatred comes from the other side. They come from the other side. You have to hate somebody to accuse them and the father of rape. You have to be a hater. And you have to have too much money you didn't deserve to have to get somebody to go and say, let me stop right here. And I want to say again, this is not about me. It is not about Mrs. Ward as well. And it's not about the chairman. It's about you, the young people. It is your prospects that we're trying to protect. This country has been very good to me and my generation. This country has been very good to my parents. Because in my time, I saw them being able to put more and better food on the table. What is at risk now? The young people who are expecting to enjoy what we enjoyed. And to protect that, I ask you to vote for the People's National Movement. When they tried to accuse me of being a thief, as they did, you remember I was supposed to have stolen sand and gravel in Tobago? Right, but that was the first attack. I was supposed to be a thief. That failed. Then they accused me of sexual misconduct with underage girls. That failed. Now they accuse me of sexual harassment of strange-looking ladies. That failed. And they're now left with one accusation, that I'm serious. I plead guilty. I plead guilty. I'm serious because I was brought up in a serious way. My father raised 6 boys, and he drummed into our heads every day. It's not what you work for, it's what you do with it. It's what you do with it. And I hold that out to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. It's not what we earn, it's what we do with it. There are many countries around the world that earn far more than us, but they can't show what we have accomplished in Trinidad and Tobago because the country's leadership had consistently failed the population. And the resources leaked off left, right, and center. There was one African country where the wife of the head was stopped in Orly Airport. She was taking away 35 suitcases of US in cash. Billions of dollars have been returned to some African countries. No, it hasn't gone out yet. We're being told by their friends that all haven't gone out. They're building safes home in their house. That's why they wouldn't leave home. Right? It's not because the country didn't have resources. It's because the resources were mismanaged or were simply stolen. You, the young people, especially those of you who are voting for the first or the second time, you are voting in defense of your prospect in Trinidad and Tobago. Get these people out of office. And don't for 1 minute subscribe to this view that I am not involved in politics and election is not about me. If you take that position, you are being highly irresponsible and there's a price you'll pay for that. Show your responsibility by getting involved in the election process and making sure that on September 7th, the right that you have under the Constitution to go to the polling station and choose a candidate of your choice, one that you have looked at and come to the conclusion is competent, has the character, and belongs to a political party that you could identify and agree with, and put your X next to the Balize. Because that examination only identifies the PNM. You look at the news tonight, persons today got nominated and spending 5-10 minutes in front of the media trying to explain who they are and which party they belong to. They can't even tell you who they are, and telling you about coalition is the way to go, and sending some imp on television this morning and saying, what you are seeing there is the coalition at work, and that's not as such a thing. They had a coalition, last election in England, they had a coalition elected the same month as the one we had here in Trinidad and Tobago. And the mouthpieces were telling you, into the future, there'll only be coalitions. And the PNM somehow is in problem because the PNM says they're going alone. We are going alone because we are the only ones that can go alone. And with that brings stability. It brings policies that we all subscribe to, and it brings the best prospect for the people of Trinidad and Tobago to get the benefit of good governance. And after all their talk about coalition in England, the next time they went to the polls, the British people gave one party a handsome majority, and the rest of the coalition gone back to where they came from to look on at the party that won the election. So you let those talking heads talk to themselves. You know this country. You know your future, and you know the people's national movement. So young people, middle-aged people, old people. And by the way, I haven't heard her promising another $3,000 to the old people yet. I ain't get mine yet. But it's not too late. She promised you a bridge to Tobago. She might yet again promise you $5,000 once you cross age 60. Because they believe in the Valmont principle. Remember Valmont Jones? Remember Valmont who had the show in Deluxe and sold tickets, and people turned up and Valmont was going to New York? And then Valmont came back and said he was sorry and put on a show for them, and they buy tickets again and Valmont gone again? And those fellas who bought tickets the second time, when you ask, not a soul bought tickets second time, Nobody wants to admit that they bought Valmont tickets second time. That's where we are now in Trinidad and Tobago. So, come September 7th, St. Joseph, put Terence Dale Singh in the column of the victorious PNM. And everywhere you are across the country, St. Anne's, put the young, well-prepared Dr. Nian Gadsby Dolly to represent you in St. Anne's. And in Dago Martin West, I know you haven't seen much of me recently. It's because I've been all over the country trying to get this government out of office. Dago Martin West is 1 seat. I need 20 more. Give me St. Joseph. And everywhere there's a PNM candidate. You see them in red on the hustings. You see the Balize. You know they are PNM yesterday, today, and tomorrow. PNM, PNM, PNM. And you know what our fundamental principle is? We are not a party. Not an ordinary party, narrow sense of the word. We are, in fact, a movement cutting across race, color, creed, class, geography, social standing. We are a movement for all. And let us come together united in the common cause to save Trinidad and Tobago. September 7th, do what you wanted to do. All the years they were misbehaving. September 7th is your day. And on the night of September 7th, when you would have voted the PNM candidates in St. Joseph, in Tunapuna, in Caroni, in Labre, in Tobago, in Toko, in Mayaro, we will all say with a great sigh of relief that we have saved ourselves. And we all say, great is the PNM, great is the PNM, and may God continue to bless Trinidad and Tobago.
Let's say for true.